The words echoed off the rusted walls of a small auto repair shop on the outskirts of Maple Hollow, a town so tucked away it barely showed up on most state maps. The kind of place where every handshake meant something, and where people still left their doors unlocked, not because they forgot, but because they trusted. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, casting the shop in shadows lit only by the warm, amber glow of hanging lights. Inside, the hum of hard work filled the air. At the center of it all, hunched beneath the dashboard of a weathered 1992 Chevy sedan, was Logan Miller. 34 years old, covered in grease, bone-tired, but focused. The air smelled of oil, rubber, and resolve. He wasn't just tinkering. He was rebuilding freedom. "Almost done, Mr. Granger," Logan called out, his voice echoing through the empty garage, thick with honest sweat and stubborn pride. From just outside the open bay door, a voice replied, hoarse, proud, and still carrying the command of another lifetime. "I told you, son, I can pay something." Raymond Granger, 78, sat in a worn wheelchair with weather-beaten hands resting on the armrests and a military posture that hadn't left him since the Korean War. His eyes, steel gray and sharp, watched every movement Logan made with the kind of intensity only someone who's seen real loss could carry. The car itself was no prize. Dented fenders, chipped paint, sagging upholstery. But it was his. It was more than transportation. It was a symbol of independence, the last tether to a life where he didn't have to ask anyone for help. But the hand controls he'd been using, homemade, outdated, unreliable. And for a man who'd lost the use of his legs decades ago, unreliable was dangerous. Logan slid out from under the dashboard and stood up, wiping his calloused hands on a rag that had seen better years. His eyes met Ray's. "Not happening, sir," he said firmly. "My grandfather was Navy, fought in the Pacific. He always told me, the real heroes don't ask for anything. That's how you know they're heroes." Ray's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened just slightly. "It's not about being a hero," he said. "It's about paying what I owe." "Then think of this as me paying what we owe," Logan said as he tested the handbrake. Besides, those parts were just collecting dust. It was a lie, a quiet one born not from deception, but from dignity. Logan had spent the better part of 3 days tracking down those specific hand controls. Drove 2 counties over, paid in cash, out of pocket. With rent coming up, and his bank account dangerously close to zero. But he'd done it without hesitation, because this wasn't just another job. As the late evening sun spilled through the open garage door in golden streaks, Logan stepped back and motioned for Ray to come forward. Ray wheeled himself closer, his movements cautious but confident. He reached the driver's side door and paused. This was it. He gripped the newly installed controls, his gnarled fingers hovering above the levers like they were something sacred. Then slowly, he engaged them. The brake responded instantly, smooth, tight, precise. Next, the accelerator. Just a small push, and the engine purred to life. Not coughed, not sputtered. Purred. Ray's hands began to move with more confidence, his motions quicker, sharper, more assured. And then, something happened. He smiled. Not the polite kind. Not the tight-lipped, guarded expression Logan had seen when Ray first rolled into his shop 3 days ago. No, this was something else entirely. It was a freedom smile. "That's what this is," Ray whispered, barely audible over the engine's low hum. "It's freedom." Logan pretended not to notice the emotion in the old man's voice. Pretended he didn't see Ray's eyes shine with the kind of tears men like him didn't let fall in front of others. Instead, Logan busied himself with putting away tools, giving Ray the space to feel everything he needed to feel. "You've got no idea what this means," Ray said after a long silence. "Doctor's been telling me for months I shouldn't be driving anymore. But without this car—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "Come back tomorrow morning," Logan said, walking him to the garage door. "We'll take it for a test drive. Make sure everything's perfect before you hit the road." Ray nodded. "I'll be here at 8 sharp?" Then, as he turned to leave, he stopped, looked back, and with eyes that had seen war, peace, loss, and survival, he said, "Don't think I don't know what you did here, son, and don't think I'll forget it." Logan said nothing, just nodded. After Ray left, Logan didn't go home, didn't even change his shirt. He stayed long into the night, going over every wire, every bolt, every inch of the system he'd installed. He couldn't afford a mistake. Not for a man like Ray. Not when a mistake meant putting a hero in danger. By the time he finished, the stars were out. The shop was dark, and Logan, worn to the bone, collapsed onto the old couch in his office. He didn't dream. But if he had, it would have been about freedom on wheels. The shrill buzz of an old alarm clock cut through the stillness of the dim office like a knife through silence. Logan Miller groaned, swiping at it blindly before sitting up on the tattered couch he'd passed out on hours earlier. His back ached. His neck popped. His entire body protested. He didn't care. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, shuffled into the tiny bathroom, and splashed cold water on his face. The cracked mirror above the sink offered back a reflection that matched how he felt. Exhausted, unshaven, circles under the eyes, and oil smudges that refused to come off even with soap. But behind that weathered face was a fire, small, steady, and warm. He had done something right. The shop was quiet. Just the ticking of the cooling engine from Ray's Chevy and the faint hum of early morning crickets still clinging to the last darkness before sunrise. Logan flipped on the ancient coffee maker in the corner, a relic of another era, and waited as it gurgled and sputtered to life. The first rays of sunlight spilled across the oil-stained concrete floor. He stepped outside, mug in hand, and took a deep breath. Maple Hollow was still asleep. The main street sat empty, save for the blinking neon open sign at Old Jerry's Diner and the distant figure of Mr. Clifton, the retired hardware store owner, unlocking his front door just like he'd done every day for the past 40 years. The world was still, peaceful, and then it happened. It began as a rumble, deep, low, almost imperceptible at first, a vibration in the ground, in the soles of Logan's boots, in his chest. Not the clunking kind of an old farm truck or the distant thunder of an approaching storm. This was different, primal, mechanical, alive. The sound grew louder, stronger. The shop windows began to rattle. Every wrench hanging on the pegboard inside began to tremble in rhythm. Logan's head snapped up. His coffee sloshed over his hand, forgotten. And then he saw it. A silver flash streaked across the treetops, just above the power lines. The early sun caught its polished metal skin and lit it up like lightning in daylight. The distinctive silhouette of a warbird, long nose, wide wings, elliptical shape, unmistakable, a P-51 Mustang. Logan stood frozen, stunned. The roar from the aircraft rolled over him like a freight train. The ground vibrated under his feet. He could see the rivets on the wings. The yellow nose cone glared against the morning blue. And then, the tail markings. Bright red numbers, hand-painted, weathered by time. He'd seen them before. Ray showed me that photo, Logan thought, barely breathing. That's his old squadron. His mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the concrete, but he didn't notice. Every sense in his body was locked on the sky. The plane banked sharply, turning with a grace that defied its bulk. The movement was precise, deliberate, not just a flyover, a maneuver. Someone was showing off, but not arrogantly, not recklessly. This was a salute. Holy hell, Logan whispered. The sound drew others. Old Mr. Clifton wandered into the street, squinting at the sky. Newspaper forgotten in the gutter. Doors creaked open. Neighbors appeared on porches. A few kids, barefoot and pajama-clad, pointed upward. And then a voice behind Logan. Is that a real one? It was Caleb, his 16-year-old part-time helper, gaping at the sky, eyes wide with disbelief. Logan didn't answer. He couldn't. Because in that moment, the Mustang circled back around. Its engine, the legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin V12, screamed like thunder through the valley. The plane made a final low pass, wings perfectly level, and then it dipped. Both wings rolled slowly. Left, then right. A gesture every pilot knew. A salute. Then it pulled up, climbing into the sky, banking away toward the Jenkins farm, a few miles down the road. Jenkins, Logan muttered. That old grass airstrip. Most people in town had forgotten it was even there. Just a strip of wild field now, but someone hadn't. The plane vanished over the ridge. Logan stood in stunned silence as the town buzzed behind him. Phones came out. Cameras flashed. Children squealed. Questions flew. But all Logan could think was, someone saw. Someone remembered. His hands were still shaking when he grabbed his truck keys and jumped into the cab. Gravel sprayed behind his tires as he sped down the narrow back road toward the Jenkins place. His heart thudded in his chest, not from fear, but from something else, something rarer than adrenaline, awe, gratitude, wonder. By the time he arrived, a small crowd had already gathered, trickling in from town like bees to sugar. And there, at the far end of the field, glinting in the rising sun, like a monument from another age, sat the P-51 Mustang, still. Majestic. Alive. The red tail numbers were visible now. No doubt about it. This plane belonged to someone who knew Raymond Granger. And Logan had a feeling he was about to find out exactly who. The Mustang's engine ticked as it cooled, soft metal sounds clicking beneath the quiet hum of early conversation. The plane looked like something from another lifetime. Polished aluminum skin gleaming with dew, red tail numbers sharp against the weathered fuselage, sunlight catching along the rivets like tiny stars. It didn't just sit there. It rested, like a proud warhorse after battle. Logan climbed out of his pickup and stood for a long moment, trying to take it all in. The crowd had grown. Dozens of people now, neighbors and strangers, all drawn to this impossible sight. Some were just gawking. Others, they understood. Veterans stood at a respectful distance, hats held to their chests. Children pointed excitedly. Teenagers took selfies. A few old-timers simply stood in stunned silence, misty-eyed. But Logan didn't notice them. His eyes were locked on the man climbing down from the plane. The canopy slid back with a soft, deliberate clack, like the closing of a chapter. And then the pilot, wearing a weathered brown leather flight jacket, scuffed boots, and mirrored aviator sunglasses, stood and surveyed the field like he'd just stepped out of 1952. He moved with the grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, dropping from the wing like a man 30 years younger. Silver hair ruffled in the breeze, his jaw lined with the experience of a life lived full throttle. He looked straight at Logan, didn't hesitate, didn't smile, just walked toward him. The crowd parted without being asked. As the man approached, the morning sun cast him in sharp silhouette. For a second, Logan could have sworn he was looking at Ray himself. 50 years younger. The same walk, the same shoulders, the same no-nonsense presence. When the man finally stopped a few feet from Logan, he reached up and took off his sunglasses. "Are you Logan Miller?" he asked. Logan nodded, slowly. "That's me. And I'm guessing you're the guy who just buzzed my shop with a piece of American history?" A grin broke across the man's face. Wry, unmistakable, familiar. He extended his hand. "Colonel Jackson Granger, U.S. Air Force, retired. Ray's my father." Logan froze, then shook the offered hand, still trying to process it. "Your father?" he echoed. "Ray never mentioned." Jackson chuckled. "He wouldn't. He's not much for bragging, especially not about us." Then his face softened. "He called me last night. Told me what you did for him. What you gave him. Logan began, but Jackson raised a hand to stop him. "You didn't just do anything, son. You gave him his dignity back, something most people don't even realize he lost." Logan rubbed the back of his neck, uneasy. It was just hand controls. Not much, really. "Wrong," Jackson said. "It was everything." He turned, nodding toward the gleaming Mustang. "I was flying back from an air show 2 states over. When Dad told me what you did, I asked for special clearance. Made a slight detour." "You flew a Korean warfighter plane?" Logan said, still not believing it. "Across 2 states to thank me?" Jackson's grin widened. "Technically, she flew combat missions in 1951. Same year my dad deployed. I've been restoring her for the past decade. Call signs Firefly. And she's still got some fight left in her." Before Logan could respond, a familiar truck pulled up and parked at the edge of the crowd. The passenger door opened, and Ray Granger wheeled himself out with the help of a woman in her 70s, tall, graceful, and strong in a quiet way. Her eyes scanned the crowd before landing on the Mustang, and then on Logan. Ray saw the plane and groaned with a mix of annoyance and affection. "You crazy son of mine," he muttered, shaking his head as he wheeled forward. "I told you a phone call would have done just fine." Jackson gave Logan a sidelong look. "He says that, but wait till you see his face." When Ray finally reached them, he looked up at the plane, eyes wide, jaw slightly slack. And for a second, the tough old veteran looked like a boy seeing magic for the first time. Jackson stepped beside his father and saluted. Ray groaned again. "Don't start with the ceremony." "Too late," Jackson replied. "Already flew the salute." Ray turned to Logan. "Don't let this fool charm you. He gets it from his mother." Logan laughed, the tension in his shoulders finally beginning to ease. The crowd began gathering again, people murmuring, pointing, asking questions. Logan stepped back as Ray and Jackson shared a moment only fathers and sons could. But then Ray looked over and said, voice low, "He offered you a job yet?" Logan blinked. "Wait, what?" Jackson crossed his arms, serious now. "My company restores and maintains vintage warbirds. We're based 30 miles from here. We're always looking for mechanics who can think like you. Adapt. Solve problems. Do things the manuals don't cover." "I don't know the first thing about planes," Logan said slowly. Jackson tilted his head. "You know machines. That's the hard part. The rest we can teach." Ray leaned closer. "I asked him to make the offer, not as a favor, not as charity, because you've got the kind of hands and heart they need." The words hit Logan in the chest. He didn't answer, not yet, because in that moment, a new sound filled the air. Not thunder this time, but the quiet click of admiration. One of the kids in the crowd was filming. An older veteran nearby wiped his eyes. Someone in the distance began clapping. And for the first time in a long, long while, Logan didn't feel like just a small-town mechanic with grease under his nails. He felt like someone who had done something that mattered. The sun was rising higher now, casting long shadows from the Mustang's wings across the grass. Logan walked around the aircraft in silence, his calloused hand trailing along the cool aluminum skin. Every rivet seemed to hold a memory. Every scratch, a story. Behind him, Jack and Ray stood quietly, watching him, like men who saw something more than just a mechanic. They saw continuity, a bridge from one generation to the next. "I'll be honest," Logan finally said, his voice low. "I don't know if I can leave my shop behind." Ray wheeled closer, the grass crunching under his tires. "Why not?" Logan hesitated. "My dad built it, with his bare hands. He started that place after the Army. Said there had to be one place in town where a vet could get their brakes fixed without getting fleeced. He worked himself to the bone keeping it alive. I feel like I owe it to him to keep it going." Ray reached into the pocket of his flannel jacket and unfolded a piece of yellowed newspaper. He handed it to Logan. It was a photo, black and white, from the local paper almost 2 decades ago. A young version of Logan stood beside his father in front of the freshly painted garage. His dad's arm was around his shoulder. They were smiling. The headline read, "Local mechanic offers free repairs for veterans. A shop with a mission." "I remember this day," Logan whispered, "but I never knew why he did it." "Now you do," Ray said quietly. "And you've carried it forward, whether you meant to or not. Legacies aren't about buildings, Logan. They're about purpose. And yours? It's not stuck to one address." Logan looked at the photo for a long moment, then carefully folded it and tucked it into his shirt pocket like it was sacred. Nearby, Robbie Jenkins, the 17-year-old grandson of the farm owner, was hovering near the Mustang with a look of pure wonder on his face. He noticed Logan watching him and straightened. "Hey, Mr. Miller," he said nervously. "That plane, that's a real P-51 Mustang, right?" Logan smiled. "Sure is." "I've never seen anything like it. And those controls you installed in Mr. Granger's car? That was amazing. I mean, I watched you all week and, well, I was just wondering." He trailed off. Logan stepped toward him. "You want to learn?" Robbie's eyes lit up, more than anything. Logan looked back at Ray, who gave a knowing nod. "There's your legacy," Ray said. "You pass on what you know, just like your dad passed it on to you." At that moment, the Mustang's engine roared to life again. Jack was climbing back into the cockpit, helmet under his arm. The crowd, which had grown steadily throughout the morning, moved aside as the warbird began to taxi across the field. The engine's deep growl rolled over the hills like a memory awakened. Jack leaned out of the canopy and shouted to Logan, "You've got 2 weeks. The hangar's open. Positions waiting. Tools are warm." Logan raised his hand in a wave. And then the Mustang took off. Slow at first, then faster. And finally, airborne, rising, gliding, slicing through the air like a silver promise. As it banked over the trees, it dipped its wings once more. Not showmanship, not routine. A final salute. Back on the ground, Logan turned to Robbie. "Come by the shop tomorrow afternoon. We'll start with brake systems." The boy beamed. "Really?" Logan smiled. "Yeah, but bring a notebook. I talk fast." Later that week, Logan stood at the gates of the aircraft restoration facility Jack had mentioned. Surrounded by hangars full of vintage planes in various states of rebirth, he felt that same quiet fire in his chest that had kept him working late for Ray. His hands weren't just meant for fixing things. They were meant for restoring purpose. By the end of that month, Logan split his time. Weekdays restoring warbirds, weekends training Robbie and helping veterans with adapted car controls. The shop back home kept running, but now it was more than a place. It was a classroom, a workshop of remembrance. And every time he touched a bolt, adjusted a lever, or explained the intricacies of engine timing to a wide-eyed teenager, he remembered Ray's words. It wasn't just a repair, son. It was dignity. You gave it back. Logan didn't ask for recognition, didn't want applause, but every once in a while, when he heard the sound of a jet overhead, or when Robbie nailed a repair on his own, or when another veteran rolled out of his shop with tears in their eyes and freedom in their hands, he smiled. Because sometimes the smallest things, a wrench, a midnight shift, an act of decency, lead to the most meaningful chapters of a life. Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe for more. And remember, kindness is like a Mustang, built to last, and sometimes powerful enough to fly. See you in the next one.